Hey, this is Dr. Darwin. Got a question for you. Are you a pre-dental student? You're thinking about applying to dental school, or you are getting ready to apply to dental school and you need some tips and strategies? You don't know what schools, you don't know what you should do? I got some tips and some strategies for you right now as we talk to a current pre-dental student who's now officially going to be a dental student. Stay right there. Hey, this is Dr. Darwin, a new dentist coach, with another episode of Ask Dr. Darwin on the New Dentist podcast show, where you ask questions about getting into dental school, getting into residency, and then life after residency and dental school as a new dentist. For those of you that are new to the show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dr. Darwin Speaks. Hit those bell notifications, as you can see right here. Hit that bell notification. So that you guys don't miss those videos that I'm posting on a weekly basis. Some very, very good content, information for you all as pre-dents, for dental students, and also as residents, and also as new dentists across the board, okay? Today's episode is going to be about getting into dental school. And we have a pre-dental student who's now officially about to be a dental student, a D1 student, and he's going to share some tips and some strategies along the way that he encountered and that he did to help himself get into dental school. So today we're joined with future student Dr. Fady Basili. Did I say?
Of course you did. Thank you, doctor.
Yeah, awesome. So welcome. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
So a little bit about myself. I was born in Egypt, actually. My parents immigrated to America. And I grew up in like the areas of Newark, New Jersey, if you're familiar with that. Later moved into like the suburbs of New Jersey, Central Jersey, where I went to Rutgers for my undergrad. Finished in May of 2018. I took a year off during the time I graduated to the time of now, just due to the fact that the scheduling of my DAT, I wanted to make sure I was very prepared and do great on my DAT the first time around so I wouldn't have to take it again. So I ended up taking my DAT in September. By that time, I thought it was too late to apply for that cycle at that time. So I decided to take the year off. I worked at Rutgers during my year off at a program called ODASIS, which is the Office of Diversity and Academic Success in the Sciences, and kind of just helped out in the sciences for those of minority groups. And interviewed during the time I was working there and got accepted to Maryland. And I'm starting in August.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. So you mentioned something about your story that a lot of people are considering, and that's a gap year. And, hopefully you'll share a little bit about, what that meant for you. But also, let's start off with this. So why dentistry? Why did you pick dentistry?
So dentistry for me started at a very young age, actually. Like I said before, I immigrated from Egypt, and growing up in Egypt, we moved when I was about 6 years old. And even at that young age, I could see the discrepancy in how people were treated in Egypt with their dental care. And for me, I just wanted to bring that change into a practice in America where I can treat everyone the same and make sure everyone has and I'm competent enough to treat everyone the same. Growing up, also my mom was a hairdresser. So with that, I had like a knack, you could say, for just perfecting things and making sure that everything fits perfectly and molds together, and just you get that perfect aesthetic feeling about someone. So combining that fact of healthcare with the fact of my mom being a hairdresser, which I guess is kind of unique, brought me closer to dentistry as opposed to any other healthcare field.
Yeah, well, some of the first dentists were barbers, so
yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
So good. So that's a great story about how why dentistry, and that's one of the things that I always want to make sure that pre-dentals, when they're preparing for their application, is that they have a personal statement that reflects, why dentistry for them and what has encouraged or led them into the profession or seek to become part of the profession. So everybody's story is unique, and you've got a unique one as well. So that's great, man.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about schools and programs. Now, how did you come up with your list of schools?
So my list of schools came to first the area. I didn't want to go too far away from home. I wanted to be comfortable enough where if there was crisis mode and I needed to come back home, I could do that reasonably. So I wasn't really applying. I live in the East Coast. I really wasn't applying anywhere in the West Coast or the middle of the country.
Okay.
So that I narrowed it down to about 10 schools. I looked at price as well, and I looked at what the schools could offer me. Because at a certain point you become a little picky. Like you realize that the school also has to love you as much as you love the school.
Right.
So you really find a way to see what the school offers you and see what you can take out of what the school offers you. So I looked at clinical skills, of course, as probably my number one option. I didn't want to go to a school that I was graduating and I was only performing like minimal clinical. I was not having a lot of clinical experience. So my schools were around 10 schools, and I interviewed at 5.
Good. So half of your schools that you applied to, you got interviews. That's great, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Challenges. What were some of the biggest challenges that you had during this process, and share with us how you overcame those challenges?
So I have a couple challenges. My first challenge was probably the waiting game, to wait for that first school to contact you because you're on your nerves. I already took the gap year. I definitely didn't want to take another one. It was kind of crunch time for me, and I was waiting for that school to first contact me. So that waiting game can mess up with your mind a little bit, and
That's right.
It's a process to get around it. And once you hear back, though, your confidence builds right back up, and you know that all the work that you put in is going to come out for a great result, of course. Also, my second challenge was being myself at interviews. At first, I was kind of, it's hard to not be robotic at interviews because you're sitting there and the person across the table from you is pretty much deciding your life. So you really have to realize that they're a person. And when you talk to them, you have to talk to them as if they were a person. And I saw myself as I went to like past my first interview, I was able to grow past that challenge and really like talk to them and interact with them and have a conversation as if they were a mentor instead of they were just someone who was deciding my future for me. And I feel like that helped me a lot in my interviews as well, because you're able to stand out more. And they like the confidence in knowing that you're not stressing and you're taking it seriously, but you're also comfortable in your abilities.
Good. So the waiting period to get that call, get that letter, get that email for an interview, and then just being yourself at the interview.
Of course, yeah.
And everything. Did you practice at all? Did you have some opportunities to kind of practice and kind of role play with maybe a friend or a colleague or something?
Yeah. So I had a friend who I went through all of Rutgers with, and he had applied the previous cycle. So he had gone through the whole interviewing process already. So I was able to bounce off ideas off of him and like talk to him about it. So it was a good way that way. And then also for myself, and this is a great tip for anyone as well. If you go on SDN, Student Doctor Network, and you just search up the school's name that you're going to go interview at on SDN, there's a lot of questions listed about like what kind of questions that specific school would ask you. So I would go through that whole list. There's probably around 50 questions. You just have to be disciplined in order to go through all the questions. And I would write out paragraphs about like how I would answer that question. And not necessarily paragraphs for me to repeat at the interview, but just to jot down my ideas and make sure I'm like putting everything I ever wanted to say into that sentence, into that question. So that helped me out a lot, and it calmed down my nerves because I was able to brainstorm beforehand. So I wasn't brainstorming on the spot right there. And it's pretty accurate. Like the questions on SDN that were school specific, I got asked, I would say about 80% of those questions at the schools I went to. So
good.
That's a great tip I would definitely give to our PreDental students.
Good. And for those of you that are not familiar with Student Doctor Network, we're going to put a link actually right down here. You'll see the link here. You can go there. But great tip, great strategy, right? Go find out what types of interview questions different schools will give you, and then doing, doing a deeper dive, which you did, which was study those questions and then prepare your answers, and then practice it. You have to practice, guys. You got to get in front of the camera right here. You got to get in front of the camera and practice. All right. So that you are more comfortable with how you're speaking, and you can evaluate yourself and see what you look like on camera, because what you look like on camera is what the admissions panel is going to be looking at, right? So you don't want to have any nervous twitches or something that you're always like looking down before you speak. All those things you'll be able to find out when you practice, or if you have a colleague that's helping you with that. So great strategy, great tip, and it definitely worked and paid off. So let's talk about the interview day a little bit more. You had 10 schools that you applied to.
Yep.
Ended up getting 50% of them as far as interviews. Tell us about the interview day and what to expect.
So for me, I treated the interview day as you were going to be watched from the moment you walked into that school to the moment you left the school. So you have to hold yourself in a professional manner the whole time. It started off usually there's an introduction from either, I think, the academic dean or the associate dean of the school. Just give you a little background about the school. I would take that time to also learn anything that you didn't know about the schools, because they're giving you a PowerPoint about the school. So when they ask you like, why Maryland, for example, and you had a list of why you want to go to Maryland, but you found something interesting in the PowerPoint that they're providing you, jot it down and use it in your answer when they ask you why Maryland. Usually what they're presenting in that PowerPoint is stuff that the school likes to highlight. Sometimes, depending on the school, there's a financial talk. So they'd have the financial aid officer come in, give you a little background about like financial aid. And then right after that, you would probably go have your direct interview. And then depending on the school, you'd have lunch either before or after. What I liked about Maryland and what stood out to Maryland was that they were the only school that took, at least for me where I interviewed, they took us outside and they showed us around the area too. So they took us to the gym, which was like a couple blocks away, took us around the block pretty much. And it gave me a perspective of like, okay, I'm not just going to the school, I'm going to that city, I'm going to that area. So I should familiarize myself with that area as well. And I like that. It felt a little more homey for me, like comfortable.
Right, right. Yeah, because that's important. I mean, you will be spending a lot of time in that building, but at the same time, you need to have a balance, and you have to have some self-care, and going to the gym is a great place.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the things that helped me get through, man.
Yeah.
Going to the gym.
Yeah.
Or just having, being able to circulate outside of the dental school building. So that's great. Any surprises during your interviews, like as far as the interview day, as far as questions?
I had a couple. So the ethical question, I could remember at Buffalo, University of Buffalo, they had an ethical question that had to deal with cannabis. And it was just, I wasn't prepared for it. So that was kind of the question I had to like deal with. Also at my Maryland interview, I don't know the reasoning behind this, and I'd love to ask him when I go later on, but my interviewee, halfway through like me saying an answer, randomly asked me I don't know if you're familiar with soccer, but there's a soccer player named Mohamed Salah. So he just asked me what number he is halfway through my interview. So I kind of just like, yeah, 11. Yep. So I gave him the answer, and then I returned back to what I was saying, but I kind of used that in my thank you letter to him. So of course, that's another tip. Always send out thank you letters to everyone you talk to at any of these interviews. So I kind of used it as a way for him to remember me. So I was like, oh, I double checked what the number was for Mohamed Salah, and it was 11. Thank you for interviewing me. Like I had a great time. So yes. It threw me a little bit off guard, and it was a surprise, but I was able to use it for a benefit later on.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons is just to see how you handle something that you're not going to expect, because it'll happen.
Yeah.
It'll happen when you're doing an exam, a benchtop exam, first and second year, and it's going to happen with you delivering care to patients in the clinic floor. When patients ask questions that you're like, why is she asking me that question? But you can't say that.
Of course, yeah.
So just to see how you would respond to something different, just to get you off your
Yeah, off the roll.
yeah. So that's great, man. All right, so good. So you mentioned you had 5 interviews, and from those interviews, you had to make your final selection. So let's talk a little bit about how you went about making those final selection between 5 schools. I know you said Maryland. You mentioned Buffalo not too long ago. What else? What other
So
schools?
NYU, Temple, and Tufts.
Great, all great schools, man. All great schools. From the largest school, NYU, 380 students
Yeah.
in the class, to Tufts, where it's 200 and oh my God, 220, 210
220, yeah, 200, yeah, around that number. Yep.
to other schools. So great. So how did you make your final decision? What were the things that you liked best, or maybe didn't like from other schools, from those schools? Anything that stands out?
So for me, my final decision came down to one, I would say cost, but I didn't really want, like, a lot of people are like, just go to the cheapest school. I don't like that personally, just because like you're not considering other things when you just go to the cheapest school. Like that's a new trend that everyone's telling everybody to go to just try to go to the cheapest school. I don't really like, I'm making a good financial decision, but I'm not necessarily just going to the cheapest school just because they're the cheapest school.
Right.
So I considered cost. I also considered, for me, I use the interview day as a way to see, can I fit in this school? Is this school going to make me feel comfortable? Am I going to be able to be my best self at this school? I also considered clinical procedures done at the school. So for me, doing my research, I learned that Temple has great clinical skills, and they're like one of the top schools in the country about like how many procedures you get done when you graduate. And they're very upfront about saying that during their interview day. So I compared Maryland to them, and Maryland was really like not far off at all. So for me, those 2 schools kind of stood out as being like the top 2. And I personally just felt like Maryland was more new in their facilities. They had a stronger research background. So narrowing it down, I would just say, figure out what you want and figure out what the school has to offer. And if those 2 things can blend together perfectly, then that's the school for you.
Awesome. Awesome. So you ended up picking which school?
Maryland, of course.
Maryland. Watch this. University of Maryland sticker right here. This is for you, man. I got to send this to you. Welcome to the University of Maryland. This is my, I'm an alum of Maryland, and very proud alum of Maryland. And I got this from one of the Student Dental Association's, one of their fundraiser drives. So I'm going to send this to you, man. It's one of the new logos that many of the school classes and also the some of the organizations are using. But this is yours, man. All right.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
So welcome to Maryland, man. So we're going to finish up here. Advice. I know you already started dropping some great nuggets, man. Some great pearls. What advice do you have for PreDents? Like your 3 top pieces of advice. I know you said something about making sure that you write a thank you letter after your interview, that's automatic. You got to do.
You have to. You
gotta
have to.
do that. Like,
that's part of, for me, that was part of the interview process.
Yes.
Like that was just an extension of my day at the interview.
Right. So give us 3 other tidbits of advice for your fellow pre-dental students that are now getting ready to apply and for this upcoming cycle.
So I would say, starting off from the applying process, apply early. That's the number one thing that really starts it off. You want to apply early. You want to make sure you have everything in check. You want to make sure you're knowledgeable in everything, so that way when you apply, there's not really surprises during the application process, and you have to go get your transcript from the school and you're not really sure how long it's going to take. You want to make sure everything's settled, and you apply very early on and be very organized with how you're applying. My second would be, during the interview process, definitely be yourself. During my first interview, I thought my first interview was Maryland, and I thought that was the worst interview, to be honest with you, because I was very robotic in my answers. Later on, I learned that you really have to just talk. Like, you can't just be reading off of a script that you have prepared. You just really have to just talk and make sure that it's a person behind that desk and you're talking to them. So be comfortable, be confident, be yourself. My third tip would definitely be to do your research about the schools. Figure out how many extractions you have to do to graduate. Figure out what their point system is like for your fillings that you have to perform during clinical hours. Figure out what their schedule is like. Do they have summer classes? Do they not have summer classes? When do you take your boards in that school? Like, do your research, become like one with the school, I would say. So that way, when you're talking about the school, nothing really surprises you when someone says something about that school. So kind of put yourself in a position where you're already at that school before you even get there. So that way you're making the best decision for yourself. So those are my 3 tips.
Great 3 tips, man. Very important. Hope you PreDentals are listening and watching. Put that as part of your process, and starting early, being yourself, and doing your research, right? There's never no such thing as I don't have enough information. No, you need as much information. If it's not online through the school, then you guys need to go check out a couple of these videos that I have in on our YouTube channel, because I've got students from all over the country, from West Coast, UCLA, to NYU, to University of Florida, to University of Texas, Michigan, and that will help you as you gather your information, your research about the schools as well. Future student, Dr. Basili, hey man, thanks so much for sharing your story. Again, congratulations to you for getting into dental school at University of Maryland, class of 2023.
Thank you, doctor. I really appreciate it, and I had a great time. I would definitely encourage any pre-dent to come out and watch, just because I've been watching your show from when I was a pre-dent, and so many of the tips that you offer are just great, and it's very hard to find those tips somewhere else. So I would definitely encourage anyone to come out and listen to you.
Hey man, appreciate it. Appreciate the love, and continue to share the videos and the channel as well. You guys that are listening and watching, if you have questions or other topics that you want to hear us do on the show, please send me an email right here at newdentistcoach@gmail.com, newdentistcoach@gmail.com. We just launched a new website, thenewdentistcoach.com, and you can also send me an email there at DrDarwin@thenewdentistcoach.com. Also, question of the day: what in this video did you like the best? What information did you learn that you didn't know about before, that you're going to do and implement now, maybe in an upcoming cycle, and implement for yourself when you are applying to dental school? What is that? Make that comment, share that comment below, if you would please, and also if you have any other topics you want us to cover. All right. Also, guys, check out this next video right here. Boom, boom, boom. Some more information for you all for pre-dents that I think will help as well. Student Dr. Basili, thanks so much, man. Good luck to you. We're going to track you and follow you, and we'll talk again maybe in about a year to see how you survive the 1 year.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I wish to talk again.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thank you.